Hollie's Hotspurs, welcome back. Talking Tottenham every week, no better place to be sat. If it's a win, lose, draw, we'll be here for a chat. Best believe we tackle topics like Romero in the back. Young Min Son, what can go wrong when he's on form? It's a dream come true, so sit back, relax and vibe with us. Special guests.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Hollie's Hotspurs Live, where tonight we might have to have a therapy session after obviously the weekend and losing to Newcastle 4-0. But you know what? We haven't had many of them this season. So what better way to do it than tonight on tonight's show? And with me to do so, I'm joined by three fabulous guests. So first of all, I'm joined by Russ. Russ, it's amazing to have you on again. How are you, my friend?
I'm very good. Thank you for inviting me back after such a big game. And so much has been said, and we'll go through it all, I'm sure.
Indeed, defo. There is a lot to rack through this evening. I'm also joined by Sonny as well. Sonny, how are you?
I'm all right, but I think I'm becoming a curse because every time I'm on a panel show, it's been after losses. Because Fulham, I was on a few after that game, and I think I'm a curse because I did that Mickey van der Ven video praising him the night before, and then he goes and becomes a meme overnight. So I might just be quiet for a month or so, or for the next 2 weeks, because I feel like I'm bringing the hoodoo back.
I mean, to be fair, the kickoff time and the kit plus you, Sonny, I can guess that is a triple threat, to be fair, for curses. But it's great to have you back on again, Sonny. And also, it's amazing to have Bob on the show. Bob, how are you?
Hey, Hollie, how are you? Great to be here. All good, other than that result in the weekend. Sonny isn't the only one who was cursing us. I was texting my friend who was a Newcastle fan there, proper Geordie, during the match. And I said, Mickey van der Ven is a Rolls Royce. And then he goes and does that. So, I stood over it. I said, I'm doubling down on this. And then he did it again and stood high. But I know he's enough credit in the bank to get away with a bad performance.
Gonna say, yeah, he's all right, Mickey, the fact that he's done so well up until this game. But hey-ho, we're going to go through it all. And it's amazing to be with you tonight. Also, welcome to everybody in the chat. Hope we are well. Like I say, keep your questions coming in as the show goes on. But let's dive straight into it. Because as we all know, this was quite a big game, to say the least. And sadly, it ended the way it did. But Russ, I'm going to come to you first. What was kind of your overall thoughts on the game once the final whistle had went?
Well, I wasn't very happy, obviously. I went to the game at St James's last season, which was, dare I say, even more painful. But that was a different regime, different players. And we had Harry Kane, who we've conceded 10 in 2 games there and scored 1. And Harry scored that, didn't he? I had a frustration, really, that was underlined after the game. When Eddie Howe, the Newcastle manager, was asked, how he set up to play us. And he said, well, everyone knows how Spurs play. So we adjusted ourselves accordingly. Super pressed us, didn't they? Wouldn't let Sonny play. Our wing-backs stroke full-backs couldn't do anything that they're supposed to do under Angie's system. So full credit to Newcastle. And I think the one thing that concerns me, and I'm not Ange out at all, we're 8 months in, we can't just, keep bringing in managers, getting rid of them and what have you. And I think he's done an amazing job overall, is there doesn't seem to be tactically a plan B when plan A is worked out or it isn't going well. Not even a tweak, really. And I don't know why that is. Is it because he's intransigent and he believes totally in the way he plays football? Possibly. Is it that he's operated in Australia and Japan and Scotland at a different level of football, and the Premier League is super hard to be in, let alone win anything in? And to go on long runs of winning games, we all know it's the cliche. Everybody can beat everybody else, more or less. Is he getting used to the Premier League? Are the coaching staff not quite up to his level? There's a million questions, really. The only thing I would say is in the final thing, before moving on to you and the rest of the guys, if we're in a bad situation and being in Europe come December, next year and things are not going well in the league, then I think he is going to be under an awful lot of pressure and scrutiny. At the moment, I've heard it said he's got a free season. It's not quite that, but it's pretty close to it, I think. But plan B is the biggest complaint I have. At the moment, we don't seem to have one.
I think that's the thing. Obviously, there's been many weeks where we've spoken on the show that the fact, okay, Angie's a bit of time to bed in. I mean, we've seen the likes of Arteta. Bear, I don't want to mention his name, but I'm going to. He's had a long time to try and implement his kind of style of football. And Sonny, sometimes you see Arteta kind of changing things. But obviously, with the result yesterday, even his plan wasn't really working. So do you think you kind of sit with Russ in terms of we need to figure out a plan B, or do you think if we just get really good at plan A, we don't need to worry about anything else?
Yeah, I think Ange's confident with his plan A, but it's the personnel. It's like we have all these attacking chances, and don't get me wrong, I've defended Timo Werner the last couple of weeks, but you put a Harry Kane on the end of those crosses or Son on the end of that cross, then you think that we go 1 or 2-0 up. So there are those situations. You think Basuma, if he was at the level he was at the beginning of the season, would we be asking for a 6? That, you know, our midfield is not as strong as we probably all believed it was. You know, it's funny how we think, like we've praised Vicario, we've praised the fullbacks, we've praised the centre backs until the weekend, but this team does concede goals. You know, rarely keeps a clean sheet under Postecoglou, but I think that's down to the midfield as much as, you know, when we are defending, there's not many people tracking back, we're getting bypassed, and teams like, I think, Fulham did it and Brighton did it, but we beat them. If we're getting out pressed, and we you know, we've shown as an Ange team we can press, but when teams come at us like Newcastle did at the weekend, we don't seem to be able to handle it whatsoever. So I think it's not so much a plan B, it's tweaking the system, because it does work. It's shown it has worked this season. Like we have had impressive results. We have had results where, you know, they've been frustrating. We struggle to break down a low block, but it's knowing that when you look at like City, Arsenal, and Liverpool, who have all gone through processes, spent money as well, obviously, like the likes of City, but it's the way that Arsenal, I think they're the best one to compare with, even though it begrudges me to say it. They went from, you know, having lots of Deadwood, having the likes of Socrates, David Luiz, and they couldn't move it. Like the weekend, I'm thinking, this makes sense, but we're moving it so slow. If we're more dynamic in our passing and our decision-making's better, and Maddison's playing further, there's so many little things that just have to be, I just think they're tweaks. That's why I can't understand the Ange out stuff. And I know this plan B, like, don't get me wrong, there's moments where I'm like, why are we playing it around like this? Why aren't we, when we're, you know, not playing it to the corner flag, being a bit more defensive? And people have said, well, maybe Ange should play a back three and all that sort of stuff. But he'll know that he doesn't want to see results like this. And I think it's because we've gone from one extreme to the next. We've gone from Conte ball, Mourinho, which was so defensive, but we were leaking goals, to now this attacking football, which is leaking goals. So it is a process, not to sound stereotypical. And I think I agree with Russ. It's hard to know from my perspective where we do change it. You know, I even say we need a new 6, but who is that? Like, we're not going to go and fork out 100 million for a Rice Rodri type. We pick up another, like, you know, an obscure name and grow them? Probably. It poses more questions than there are answers, and I just think with this manager, it does look like more of a long-term ambition to the previous managers I've already mentioned. So, yeah, I just think what I hated about yesterday was there wasn't a lot of Saturday. There was a severe lack of fight, and it was just like this attitude of just turn up. And I think that's been the case for the last couple of weeks. So I'm not sure why that's the situation. They're not tired, are they? They're playing one game a week. But yeah, I feel like that was quite a politician answer.
It was good though. You definitely covered a lot of bases with that. And like, Bob, for you, what was your overall thoughts? Obviously, the scoreline was frustrating, and in the manner that we conceded those goals. But how did you feel, obviously, after the game?
Yeah, look, I feel, you know, look, it's very easy to say this as football fans, you know, and when it comes to practice, it's tougher. But we're all guilty of kind of getting too high with the highs and too low with the lows. And like, at the start of the season, we were on a run, and it was amazing. Like, we were all absolutely loving it. Great time to be a Spurs fan. every game you were looking forward to. As soon as we got a win, you're almost sad because you know it was over for another week. And then we hit a bit of bad form with the injuries and whatnot. Look, that happens, part of it. But now we have a bad result, and we've seen Twitter and meltdown, people getting bullied, people making takes, people just being toxic. And let's just, especially this season, let's not get too high or too low, because as Russie said, it's as close to a free season as you could get, as long as we were seeing improvement, which I think we can all agree, in comparison to this time last season when we went away and lost 6-1 for them, we're still seeing an improvement. We're still improving to kind of this time last season. Now, if it was a case we were playing turgid football like we were last season, that's a different story. But he's come in, he's made massive changes. Most of his signings have worked out. So the recruitment side of things is starting to work out. The football side is, and Sonny, I agree. I think we're a few tweaks away. I don't think it's that far. It's just that those final few things and a few little changes, 1 or 2 players in the summer. And I think as that sixth position, I was defending Basuma so much up until I think the last few weeks. And even at the start of the season, I was making comparisons and getting carried away about how good he was. And he looked unbelievable. And then he got that stupid red card against Luton, and he just hasn't been the same since. And so we're missing him. We're missing that quality 8. And then I think it's fair to say we're missing that number 9, that goal scorer. Because again, I know this is divisive, but I don't think Sonny is that number 9, especially when they are camping deep. And you need that player who can just nip in with a header. You can whip a ball in. Somebody who can just get that scrappy goal. And Son isn't that player. Fair enough, you're away from home and they're playing a high line. You can get in behind. Absolutely. But the games we've lost, like against Fulham, he wasn't that player. Against obviously Newcastle the weekend, he wasn't that player. So I think if you shift him out to the left ahead of Werner, you get a 9 in, a quality 9. Like, again, this could be wishful thinking. I love Isak, watching him on the weekend, him playing through the middle, Son on the one side. Now, again, I don't want to be one of these. I think Man United fans are probably the guiltiest for doing this, doing the what if 11s for next season. But a player like Isak, he'd be absolutely perfect for us. So if you get a player like that up front and spend the money, which again, maybe wishful thinking, I think we're going to be an unbelievable place next season. Like, I think the Chelsea game, the first 20 minutes of that Chelsea game was the best football I've seen us play since probably 16, 17. I have these unlucky text messages. My uncle's a Spurs fan. He's the reason I'm a Spurs fan. I texted him and I said, it's the best football I've seen us play in years, probably ever. That 20 minutes, I thought we were unbelievable. We were knocking it around. And I was thinking, like a lot of us, geez, this could be 4 or 5 to us. And how that went, how that aged badly. But yeah, it's minor tweaks. I don't think it's time for meltdown. And Russ, I agree. I think if we're having this conversation in a season's time and we're still that flaky team, we're still kind of having 2 wins, losing 1, having 2, losing 1, and losing badly, grand, we can start having more serious conversations. But right now, let's enjoy this somewhat stress-free season. I think that's as close as we can get to it. But yeah, and another one to note is Charlie Eccleshare, the writer for the Athletic, said at the start of the season, he said that Ange was going to have these games, these like brain fart games is what I call them, where we lose 4-0 away from home somewhere. He maybe even said Newcastle, and there's absolute meltdown, and your Jason Cundys are, Jesus, Ange isn't the man this, Ange isn't the man that, is he the right man to bring us forward? He called it, and it's exactly what's happened. So let's just try to write these off as best as we can and finish 4th, 5th, get European football for next season, and you have a good summer, have another pre-season, 1 or 2 more players like a Van de Ven coming in who none of us have heard about. Like, I was thinking about players who I wanted in a few seasons ago, like Joachim Andersen. I was desperate for us to sign. Now look, on a centre half, absolutely, but am I glad we have Mickey Van de Ven and Romero ahead of Joachim Andersen? Absolutely, I am. So maybe I don't have a clue, but yeah, that's my ramble anyway on the football on the weekend.
Right, it's a great way to put it, and I think it's perspective, because obviously as fans of football, not just Spurs, we do get obviously frustrated and hot-headed when things aren't going quite our way. And I think the thing to remember is sadly, Russ, I think some of the things that happened in that game were potentially our own doing. Obviously, in the first goal, you feel like Udogie wins the ball back and then he's not strong enough to keep it, and boom, he's like in on goal, and Mickey van der Ven unfortunately slips. So for you, are you on the same wavelength that maybe a bit of perspective? And I know how frustrating that goal was, and again, how poor it was for Mickey, unfortunately, to obviously slip on that first one.
Look, usually Mickey van der Ven is 2 players for us. We play with 12. Yeah, everyone is human. Everyone makes mistakes, and it was just one of those games for him. I mean, largely, I have to say that I generally agree with Sonny and with Bob and the sentiment of what they're saying. One thing that I forgot to mention, and I think it is significant, in Japan, Ange had money, and in Scotland, he was able to have the best players in his team. So Ange ball works if you've got better players than the other teams. Now, at the moment, we don't have better players 1 to 11 than the other teams, and we know that. So it's that old conundrum again, isn't it? Is the checkbook, going to come out in the summer? He's been back so far, but it is absolutely crucial, I think, that we find a number 6. Bob was talking about that, and Sonny was talking about it. I agree with Sonny that we need a striker, a proper goal scorer. And incidentally, 18 months ago, not because I'm any form of footballing guru, my wife is Swedish and I know quite a lot about Swedish football. I was saying to people, he was in Spain at the time, Isak, he'd be perfect if Harry Kane left. And actually an awful lot cheaper than he'd been now. But and I agree, he would be absolutely brilliant for us. What a finisher! What a level-headed young man, as well. Incidentally, about to play in the Swedish football team, where they've got a Danish coach who said the Swedish FA have told the whole team they've just got to defend. That's all they're interested in. So he probably won't enjoy playing for Sweden so much. But I think he'd love playing for Spurs. But fair play, Newcastle are a very big football club. I mean, that atmosphere is. I don't know if you guys have been in St James's Park. I was there in mid-80s, and now it's up another 10 levels. It's very, very intimidating. And you can't just turn up there, as one of the boys was saying, with the attitude, oh, well, we're here, we're going to win. Because you're not. And they've got some tremendous players, haven't they? Anthony Gordon, we couldn't cope with him. The defenders, Big Dan Burn, didn't know how to get past him, and Shah and Guimaraes, fantastic, was having a field day against us. And the midfield, Sonny is right for me. The midfield area is really a problem. And if you play a high line that we do, at sensible times, you should be dropping back 10, 15 yards and not standing on the halfway line, because they could just play through us. And that's what they did. It was like taking candy from a baby. So if we have ambitions, and Ange said he wanted to be in the title conversation next season, there is going to have to be, I'm sorry to come back to it, a plan B. And little tweaks might not even be good enough. That's what I think. But I take on board particularly what Sonny was saying. You watch the games and you think, they just did that. It would be a little bit better. But at Newcastle, I felt that we were overwhelmed and lost heart and didn't really show a lot of fight once again for the travelling fans and all of us watching elsewhere around the UK and around the world. And it's all very well, James Maddison coming out apologising to the fans. It's a nice gesture, but it's 2 consecutive terrible defeats at the same stadium, conceded 10 and scored 1. And I know Ange wasn't there, but some of the players were no lessons learned. Quite unbelievable, really. Horrible.
And I think that's the thing that... Oh, go on.
Sorry, Hollie, could I just jump in there and make a point while I still remember it? One of which is, Russ, I suppose I said I wouldn't get too low by the lows, and now I'm probably contradicting myself a bit. But is there a bigger worry when it comes to it being an attitude problem? And the reason I'm saying that is, you said there, when Ange ball works when you have the better players. I feel on paper we have better players than Newcastle. I think we have better players than Fulham. I think we've better players than Brighton. I think we've better players than Wolves. If you look at our best performances this season, Man United at home, I think we're better players than them, but they're a huge club. I'm just, and they have big names. Arsenal away, we were great. City away, and we most certainly didn't have better players than City that day, that were our best performances. Liverpool at home, we were good. It seems to be these games that we're going into and almost thinking, all we have to do, as Sonny said, is show up. And I know 12:30 kickoffs can be strange games, but is there a bigger problem with attitude? And I thought maybe that the attitude problem had started to be stamped out by Ange, but now maybe I'm talking myself into thinking maybe there is a bit of a problem there when it comes to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's an interesting question. I was watching very carefully, like we all were, and I don't know if anybody else noticed, Brennan Johnson went inside 10, 12 yards and started playing there. Ange went absolutely crazy at him and said, get on the touchline. And I hadn't seen him quite so animated actually on the touchline for us since he's come to the club. So, and I did think at the time, are they not listening to what they're being asked to do? And so that kind of ties in, Bob, with, maybe one or two suspicions that you and I'm sure other people have as well. They all talk glowingly about Ange. But I wonder whether some of them are just losing a little bit of faith in the Ange ball, as it's called, and starting to do their own thing. I can't imagine for a minute that Ange Postecoglou is happy with James Maddison playing so deeply, so regularly. It just doesn't add up to me. He needs to be edge of the 18-yard box, as we all know. Those little passes, little runs into the box, little flicks. That's where he does his damage. So I'm not inferring, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's a crisis and, but one or two games where we haven't played well, you think, why are they not up for it? And there's just little things that you can look at when you're watching them live in the stadium, or if you're traveling away to watch them, that you can see far better on the television. You think, that doesn't quite add up. So maybe he's going to have to, re-evaluate his authority over the summer. I mean, we know we're going to be saying goodbye to people, and there's going to be some new players, please, up there, that are going to be brought in, and they've got to be players of quality. But, all professional footballers tend to have a little bit of a precious side to them, and I'm sure we're no different. But it was interesting with Brennan Johnson, who I think actually has acquitted himself really well since he's been with us. He's got a load of stick, and I think he's proved the doubters wrong already. But him not playing where he was meant to play, I thought, that's interesting. And sometimes you just see things that might not mean a thing, but it stuck in my mind.
And I think it's quite interesting, and Bob, where you make that point, because obviously last week we were talking about Basuma and the fact, like you mentioned, since he's got that red card, he hasn't really performed to the level. And Sonny, I want to come to you for this one, because obviously we've spoken a little bit about that midfield dynamic. And I think the last game, and as much as a lot of Spurs fans slate Højbjerg's performances, I thought he suited quite well in that second half against Forest. It was kind of a little bit miffed to me that maybe he decided, why didn't you put Højbjerg in instead of Basuma if Basuma's not to this level? I mean, what's your kind of take on Basuma in this dynamic in this midfield at the moment?
I think, first of all, with Højbjerg, to answer that part, he's a curious case, because in that game he came on and was quite good, but then he took a free kick and it was a bit weird, and then he kept making mistakes. And also, there's a chance he won't be at the club in the summer. If weirdly enough, he's probably our most prized asset for a sale. We could get probably 30 million for him if we really push for it. With Basuma, I don't know if it's the sense of he's dropped in form himself, or he's not as confident, or those red cards have affected him, or teams have known how to sort of, because he was really good in that sort of like the half space and sort of picking a pass and comfortable on the ball a few times. And I don't see him on the ball as much anymore. And it's especially, he's not really good defensively as he was at Brighton. I remember at Brighton in proper breaking up the play. At the moment, I'd rarely see him on the ball, rarely see him making tackles, and if he does, they're fouls. I think the thing is about Ange's midfield is the 6 is of vital importance compared to a lot of the other players. And we've seen a lot of players play that position who are all quite different. Sarr, Bentancur and Basuma and Højbjerg and even Skip, I think, has been there a little while. And I just think when we go back to the dynamic of how the midfield was at the beginning of the season, you had Basuma in there and Sarr was there as cover, but Sarr was a bit box to box. And then Maddison sort of had a free roam. But the way it's been recently is what I mentioned before. Maddison's seeming to drop all the way back. Basuma's just floating there. And then the other midfielder, who's usually been Bentancur or mixed up, has been pushing all the way up. So it's not really been as... But that's the thing with an Ange midfield. They're not quite regimented. They're quite... Johan Cruyff style total football. They can all, mix and match it. But maybe we need some players in that position to sort of bring the best out of, because Sarr looks like he's going to be a star, even though he's dropped off a little bit lately. Maddison is pretty much a bit like the talisman, even though he's dropped off a bit lately. So maybe whoever's in that 6 has sort of got to make those other 2 thrive. And that's the problem. There's no names coming to me for those positions. Like Conor Gallagher keeps being linked, but he's more of an 8. And is he really better than what we have? I'm not so sure. I've been against that signing for about a year now. It's just confusing. It's knowing like this dynamic. And I'm glad Bob mentioned it as well. I'm not a big fan of Son being a striker. I think we need a proper number 9 in the middle, whether that is Richarlison or someone backing him up. And then Son does his best work on the wing, whether that's cutting in, shooting. I feel like in the last couple of games, whether it's been West Ham, whether it's been Fulham, he just can't get into the games because his weakness is he's not good in the air and he's not good with his back to goal, holding off defenders. So what's the point of playing them against teams who are going to be, happy for you to lump balls in for crosses because Son's not going to win them. So I think it's that same thing of I still think Ange is working out the perfect lineup because look at Kulusevski. It's good you mentioned Swedish players, Russ, because I don't know what's happened to him recently. Like I thought, here we go. He's back to the form we've seen, amazing dribbler, played in the midfield, plays on the wing, but now it seems like he can't even do the right when it comes to decision making. Hopefully, Bergvall, another Swede, he could be the answer in that midfield potentially, but then we're putting a lot of pressure on a youngster again. So I don't know. The thing is, I feel like we need to build this squad out. Because I'm looking at the bench still, and there's not much option there, and that's why I think Werner should be a bench option. I think he's better than what we have than Brian Hill. Or something like that, and maybe give some youth a go. I feel like we've got such a good academy thriving with Jamie Donnelly and Yaya Santiago and whatnot, the 2 defenders. But it doesn't seem like Andy's ready to chuck them in at the deep end as of yet. And then you see like Pora goes off injured. Like there's not much. You bring Emerson Royale on. Can he really play the style well? I feel like that's what it is at the moment, and I don't know where we're going to go in the market and who we're going to sign to combat that. But yeah, it's just a shame because I thought Basuma was the reason, because he seems like I saw the interview. I don't know if people saw it on the Tottenham YouTube channel of him, the Driving Home series they do. And he seems like he's a good personality. He's got his head screwed on, but I don't know if it's just got to him at the moment, all this sort of like pressure maybe. And it's just the fact as well. I think what fans want to see is if someone isn't performing, like, don't be afraid to mix it up. But his space has been quite safe at the moment. Like Son got hooked off against Newcastle. Maddison's been subbed off a few times. Maybe it's time to drop Basuma for a couple of games. Maybe put Bentancur in there. I think he's coming a bit more into form. He's played the 6. Maybe it's just, shifting it around. But when you're playing like these games thick and fast, top 4's on the line, you've got to play City, Liverpool, Chelsea, and Arsenal. Maybe it's not time to be experimenting and rotating. Keep that for pre-season and next year.
I think that's the thing. Like you said, I think we're heading in the right direction. It's just when moments in the game, obviously against Newcastle, and you want to mix it up, you look to the bench and you're still kind of a bit like, I don't think this is going to work. And I think that's the most frustrating thing because, Bob, I think throughout the whole game, we were just kind of all over the gaff. And I think when we have those moments of we're going to play a pass and it goes horribly wrong, that's it. They're in behind. And we saw that. I think it was Isaac's 3rd goal where the ball just got intercepted and pinged straight over the top to him. And again, that's kind of going back to this sense of if we're going to play Ange's way, we need to make sure we are passing the ball properly, aren't we?
Yeah, not only that, it's been switched on. If the pass doesn't, it's been switched on after. And a player who hasn't been mentioned yet, and I love him, but he's been off it when it comes to, I think he switches off, is Udogie. I think he can be a little bit headless at times. We saw against, was it Brentford, he gave the pass back. Was it him who gave the pass back to Van de Ven, or Van de Ven gave it to him, but he was definitely involved. He switched off for that. I think he switched off for the first Brentford goal as well. He switched off against Luton. He got beaten down his side after Kulusevski gave away the ball. He got beaten against Forest, and there was times against Newcastle where I felt he'd give the ball away, or he wouldn't look over his shoulder. He wouldn't even do a quick. I know this scans per match is this new fad that statisticians are coming up with, but it's a tough one to say. But it's like he's a little bit headless at times. Now he's young. He's 2021. He's only going to get better, and with a coach like Ange, I think he will. But there's times when he just frustrates you when it comes to switching off after a bad pass. And yeah, look, bad passes are going to be made. And I know Ange always says he wants his players to make mistakes and be brave in possession and maybe go for that pass that isn't on or whatnot, but just keep going and going and going. But if you do that, you have to be ready for when the break is on, and we haven't been ready. And considering I think our back four is great: Udogie, Porro, and the two boys at centre half. Like, I couldn't see an upgrade there personally. I know that might get hammered, but I don't think there's centre halves who are on a level or who are up there. Like, look, no doubt Saliba is fantastic. So is Van Dijk. But the two boys are up there with them. The left full, the right full. There's not been much better than Udogie, even though I've just had to go at him there. Porro can again switch off defensively, but he's fantastic going forward. So there's not much upgrade there. It's your Ben Davies. There's an upgrade there, and I love Ben Davies I think he's been a great servant for the club. I think I'd keep him around for a squad player because he's, his attitude seems to be amazing. He has his degree and everything, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. Then you have Emerson Royale could be upgraded on that side. I know he's a bit of a cult figure, but I don't think he cuts the mustard when it comes to coming on and actually improving or even putting pressure on Porro. I think Porro knows his position is safe. Sorry, I've gone on an absolute tangent here, Hollie.
No, it's good.
But there is that kind of, and on the midfield side of things, I always thought, Sonny, that our midfield was going to be perfectly balanced coming into this. Bissouma, Bentancur, and Maddison. I couldn't wait for it. I know Lee McQueen was dying for it as well. We all were, and it just, the balance isn't right. The best balance is when Sarr is in there. And there is a bit of depth in midfield, but yet that's an area that people aren't performing either. We have depth, I think. I think Werner, as he said, Sonny, is a rotational player. I think I would keep him around long, and I know that's divisive to say as well. But I'd keep him around for next season at 15 million. I think he's a good option off the bench when teams get a bit leggy. You can get in behind. And yet I saw the defence is exposed. I think somebody put in there in the comments there. Yeah. Philly mentioned it there. So it has been exposed. And I think we do need that little bit more stability, as I mentioned there earlier, with that six. Maybe more of somebody who can break play up a little bit better than Bissouma does. I'd love maybe this is the Irish coming out from me, Roy Keane in there. Not asking for much, but somebody who's going to break play up and get forward, break play up and then be that box-to-box player. Not even be this press-resistant player, but break play up and they're on their bike.
Maybe that would work, like a more like a Paulinho if he was a bit younger at Fulham. Just because the way I see it as well, people think this six has got to be a good passer, but maybe sometimes we do need a better Højbjerg, whoever that is. Because if you think about it, the other midfielders next to you could do the passing, and we've got two fullbacks who are basically like midfielders when they're up the field anyway. But again, it's just I keep thinking of names. I just can't think of anyone at the moment. You're thinking of paying upwards of 100 million for these players now. Even I think Bayern were going to pay 80 million for Paulinho, and he's 28. So, but I think he'd be a good option. I don't know what you guys think.
Who cares? Who cares about age? I don't care. Bring them in, like Scotty Parker. We brought him in when he was old enough, and he did a great job for us. And do you remember, you were saying about having that destroyer in there? Do you know what I think Højbjerg's problem is? Højbjerg doesn't know his level, and I think Højbjerg might think he's a bit like me at five-a-side. He thinks he's better than he is, and he'll try to beat that one too many players and give it away. If he just broke it up and gave it, I'd be happy with that.
It's because he's a Jose Conte player. He was perfect for them, but for this, it's a bit like he needs to be a bit like able to pass and dribble a little bit, I feel like, but I don't know.
So Jorginho was a good signing then, wasn't he? You know,
he'd probably be good. Like, imagine if.
Well, exactly. That's my point. You know, obviously we need somebody who's that good, if not better.
They signed him when he was 31.
Sorry, Bob?
They signed him when he was 30-31.
I know. So it doesn't matter what you said about age. Yeah.
Yeah, we get bogged down in it. And I don't care if we're signing a player. It's not, the money's not out of my pocket. I don't care if we have to replace him in 5 years' time or 2 years' time. Let's get him in. Let's improve. Is he an improvement on what's there at the moment? If the answer is yes, well, let's have a look at him rather than getting bogged down about the money you're going to make back from him.
By the way, Holes, can I mention the elephant in the room, set pieces? Why
I'm glad you mentioned it.
so unthreatening from them, and why are we so vulnerable at them? What are Mr. Jedinak and Mr. Mason actually doing? And I think that's an area we need to look at, because zonal marking, there's no marking, as we saw against Newcastle. We are shambolic at the moment at set pieces, aren't we?
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that actually was on my next lot of list in terms of that zonal marking, because for us, it actually drives me insane. When I used to play football, it was always like, pick up your man. You know you've got, that's fine. But zonal it seems not to be working week after week, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not a fan. We shouldn't do it.
If only there was,
and the stats prove it.
If only there was a set piece coach out there who had a reputation of being one of the best set piece coaches in the world.
Yeah.
About.
Well, we did have a really good one, didn't we, under Conte, if you remember? But I don't suppose he'll be back.
The thing I don't get about zonal is, because I've never been a fan of it either, but it's the point of, if it worked, then fair play. But when I'm seeing 2 or 3 of them standing in no man's land, or whatever you want to call it, and then there's no one on the back post, there's no one on the front post. That's what I always remember. There was always a defender there, a defender there. That was the most zonal you got, because you're sort of just helping your goalkeeper out. The goalkeeper's getting bullied. Like, every time it must be an Italian thing, because I saw Donnarumma flying about like a headless chicken last week against Barcelona. So I don't know if it's the Italian goalkeeper way, but it is frustrating, because especially I'm glad Russ mentioned up the other end, we can't get a ball past the first man. Like, I thought when we brought Maddison in, I was thinking, right, free kicks and corners now. Like, we're back to where we are, like Ericsson level of delivery. Porro, there was a stage where his delivery was good. I think against Manchester United, he was just, I think Manchester United one of the worst at defending corners next to us. But I just can't get my head around it when I'm just seeing like Zuma, no one on him. Shaw, no one on him. You just got to think, and it's not like we've got a small team either. We've got some really, like, Mickey van der Ven and Romero are big defenders. They should be able to handle this. Now, every time a corner's being, I feel like it's like a penalty's being awarded. It's just almost like you're just sitting there thinking, if this gets cleared, then we're right here, because we even countered from a corner. I can't remember who it was. One of the games recently, we countered from a corner. So you think, oh, like, I don't know if it's because they're setting up for that, but sometimes you got to defend these set pieces, and even just the free kicks, and it's a bit to me where I'm thinking, what do they do all week on the training ground? Like, it's all well like implementing this style of play, but you just got to change that somehow. And just really got to look at that going into next season, because that's all what's going to happen. They're just going to put a person on Vicario to bully him out of it, because you sort of can get away with that now, and then just put a ball, whether it's James Ward-Prowse, whoever, these people can just deliver it on a sixpence, and the big burly defenders are just going to knock them in for fun.
Yeah.
Again, I think,
wasn't it interesting what Eric Dyer said? And it could be a barb, but I don't think so. Eric's nice, intelligent man. He said Ange didn't have any tactics in training. We never did any. Wow. Bit worrying.
I think that could have been picked up, though, as a not a breakdown translation, because they both speak perfect English, but I feel he was comparing Ange's tactics to Conte having them like drilled within an inch of their life, as opposed to almost like learning the tactics through playing. I think maybe that's what he meant, because Andrew was asked about it, I think, in a press conference, and he got a bit, you know, how Ange can get a bit kind of sarky. I think there was an element of that. On the set pieces, though, look, I think if you're struggling with something, anything in life, anything, what do? You go back to basics. If you're working, like I work in sales, if I'm struggling, having a month or a quarter where I'm struggling, I sit down and I go back to the drawing board and I go back to basics. I don't try to overcomplicate it any further. And I feel they've just gone the other way. And rather than trying to fix it by just taking a step back, they're trying to fix it by overcomplicating it even more. Like, as you said there, Sonny, and like, when you were a kid playing football, front post, back post, you took, you know, the tallest lad in your team took the tallest man in their team, or lad in their team, or girl in their team. And then on the first phase, your keeper shouted out, push out, push out, push out, and you played for an offside. It's as simple as you can get. Like, and look, I know, you know, this is hardly Premier League level, but it just feels like they're overcomplicating it when there's such simple fixes there.
You say tall man, small man. Emerson was picking up Dan Burn, so I don't know, work that one out. It doesn't take a genius to work that one out. Don't put him on. He's tiny.
Yes.
But no, I think that's the thing. I think, like I said, we just need to go back to basics, because it's driving me insane at the fact that we can all sit here and be like, we've all played this at grassroots level. How is it that hard to implement it in the Premier League, in the sense that just take ownership of the person you're trying to mark, because we are leaking so many goals through set pieces. And again, it works the other way. Take ownership. If you want to head that ball on the net, or you want to get to the ball, at least make a run towards it or get your first ball on target. But yeah, that game was a bit of a mess all over the gaff. But luckily, we've got a bit of a break, because guess what, Russ? Guess who we've got next? We have Arsenal.
Yes.
So without further ado, obviously it is at home, which is probably a bit of a saving grace. But how do you kind of see that one going down?
Well, they've got Bayern Munich, they've got Wolves, and they've got Chelsea before us. I happen to think, incidentally, before I give you a full answer to the question, playing only once a week for us means that you can lose your rhythm a lot more quickly, I think, than if you're playing twice a week in European football. So I hope next season we are playing in European football, or having 2 long cup runs. Same difference, really, in the amount of games. Arsenal's Arsenal. They're terrified now of playing us, because they've got to win, you know, and the game against Villa, it was a poor performance by them. You know, and to be fair, you know, they are a very good team, or a team of very good players, because you don't get to where they are in the league, like Liverpool and Man City, without doing it regularly. But the wobble is here. Be interesting to see how they get on in Munich. I think if they lose out and out of the Champions League as well, it's really going to knock them. But this is an opportunity for us. I mean, I don't like the fact we're waiting 2 weeks. I don't think any of us would like to wait 2 weeks. You really, the players would want to play the next day, I'm sure. But yeah, obviously you don't want to lose, but it would be lovely to beat them. And I think, based on that, and you know how they struggled against Munich, coming to our ground, hostile, there's a very good chance that we can get a good result against them. And it would just underline what I think is going to happen, that they're not going to win the league.
That would be lovely. And I think that's the thing.
Yeah, it would. But, you know, in a way, isn't it sad? And if you think about it, our season now, by the look of it, with Villa going so well, there might not be a 5th place in the Premier League for the Champions League. So that big money earner that Daniel Levy inevitably will want, for all the reasons that we know, and a lot of us would like, although I think we'd struggle in the Champions League. This game now is absolutely huge for us. It's bigger than City at home. It's bigger than Liverpool away. It's bigger than Chelsea away. This is actually what it's come down to. And actually, I think it's wrong to think of it that way, because there are, aside from the North London derby, 36 other games a season. And those are the ones that, if you do well in, you can win the league, or at least come very close to it. So I hope that we win. Obviously, it's got to be a load more passion than there has been against the likes of Fulham and Newcastle, and some of the games that we played at home and scraped over the line. It's a big test, but I'm confident we will beat them.
I love that, and I think that's the thing. I think obviously I was a bit worried when before the Villa game, but Sonny, obviously that bit of derail that they've had in that Villa game does make me feel a little bit more hopeful in the sense that we could potentially get the job done.
I mean, in the first 45 minutes, they were great. They were really playing some good stuff. But, you know, Odegaard, Saka, they all go sometimes when the pressure does get to them, they all sort of bottle it a little bit. And you just think, you know, the way that Villa went at them, it sort of reminded me how Villa played us at the stadium earlier this season. But it's a tricky one to judge because stereotypically form goes out the window. They're playing 3 games. We've got 2 weeks off. You think if we could play anything like we did at their place, it'd be fantastic. If we play like we did last season in this fixture, and I was there, and it was so toxic, and we looked like we could have got back into it, but it was just no impetus to do it. It's so hard to call because it's just such a tricky run for us after there as well. You know, playing City, Chelsea, Liverpool, you know, even Sheffield United and Burnley. You don't know what situation Burnley are going to be in. They could be still fighting at that stage. Sheffield United, not so much. So yeah, it's hard to call. When you think this is what annoys me about this Newcastle game. You look at that and go, was that one of the easier games? And that sounds rude saying that to Newcastle, but you think now we're looking, is Arsenal easier than we never win at Liverpool? We never win at Chelsea, even with their form. And, you know, Chelsea beat us earlier in the season. City have beaten us now at the stadium in the FA Cup, scored a goal. So they've all got stuff to play for. It's coming down. It's a very exciting run-in. But yeah, I still think Arsenal are not going to win it. I still think they've got issues. The issues are starting to come out now. Mentality, but we've got to go out there and show that we've got a bigger mentality at them. At our home stadium, we've got to bring the atmosphere. People have got to be on form again. If there's a game if you can't get up for a North London derby, then don't bloody wear the shirt, is what I'll say, because you've got to be going into your tackles, but not too hard, Romero, and just really fight for this badge, because it could mean, you know, I agree with what Russ is saying about the Champions League. Like, I'd worry about us in that competition as well. But any form of European football, where even if we finish 5th with the Europa League, I think that's a good season. We're still in a good competition that we've won, unlike those Gooners. Yeah, I'm always the optimist. I feel like I'm happy with what I'm seeing. It's just a frustrating thing that we're in this world now where I want West Ham to be knocked out. I want Arsenal to be knocked out, but that annoys the coefficient. But then you should be good enough. It's about top 4 of the Champions League. I know the format's changing, but you got to be in that top 4 really. And if Villa get it over us, then they've had a better season than us, and that's what it is.
And I think that's the thing. I think, as cliche as it sounds, everything happens for a reason, and I think we're still trying to build something. And maybe top 4 is potentially a little bit too soon, but hey, let's see how it goes. But Bob, I kind of want to allude to what Sonny said in terms of, if this is a game they can't get up for, what are they going to get up for?
Yeah, there's not much they can if they can't get up for this one. I mean, Sonny took the cliche there. Form goes out the window coming into a derby. I had that one ready up the sleeve, ready to go, Sonny. But
sorry.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to see a performance. I think as flaky as we have been, like as I said earlier, we get up for the big games. These are the types of games that, again, Maddison is due a performance. But I think this is the type of game that he'll love to be a part of. He's that type. I say that as a mate, but he seems to be that type of player who wants to be part of these games. Romero will be up for it. Van de Ven, I think, will feel like he has to make up for the weekend just gone. I think the whole team will probably feel like they have to make up for the weekend they've just had. It's also a chance to fully close the book on a title charge for Arsenal. And the players know that. They're not stupid. They're as much fans as we are. They're playing for the team and will want to do it. So I think we're going to get something. Whether it be at a point, be it a win, do you know what? We're not going to lose the game. And I'm confident to say that. And last time I had this feeling was that game at the end of Conte's first season when we played them and we beat them 3-0. And we were drinking the Beavertown beforehand. And I swear, I wasn't even nervous. Normally before a derby, I'm really nervous. That game, I just knew we were going to win. This game, I know we're not going to lose. And that can be clipped up by some Arsenal fan if we do, but I don't think we are. So, yeah, I think we're going to get something out of it. Yeah, I think, look, we're going to derail their title charge.
I love that. And I think that's the thing. And I know I saw lots of people tweeting yesterday in terms of, oh, well, if Villa let Arsenal win, blah, 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 then it means we get top four, all this stuff. And I think there's no one in their right mind that's a Spurs fan who would want any other team to lose but Arsenal. I think that's just kind of how the world works. But we'll close that book for the time being. Obviously, we have got a little bit of time now to chill out. I say chill out. Stress-free before we do play, obviously, Arsenal. But before we go and say our goodbyes, I do obviously want to bring up what's happened over the weekend, and that is the fact that Spurs women are on their way to an FA Cup final. So, Russ, I want to hear your thoughts first, and we'll go around the room. Obviously, it's a massive occasion, not just for the women, but for the club in general.
Well, let's hope they win it, because then Spurs have won a trophy, haven't they? So that is the monkey off our back, isn't it? It's great. I mean, I'll tell you a quick. It's not particularly interesting, but it's a coincidence. I was dealing with an estate agent, and her surname is the name of a very famous Italian footballer, but she's not married to him, Schillaci. And so I started talking to her. I said, "Wow, what a famous name!" She said, "Yeah, my husband is, Italian." I said, "Oh, is he football mad?" "Oh, yeah, he supports Arsenal. I support Spurs." The usual story. And then she said, "My sister used to be the captain of Spurs ladies." And I forget her name, which I'm pinching myself about, but it's not now. But we were talking about the development of the ladies team, and her sister, and I'm so sorry I forgot her name. I'll find it out for next time, is working for Sky, as a pundit. And it's going to bring a lift to the club, and the crowds are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and to get to a major final in what is still the infancy in many ways of this women's Premier League, as we know, that is getting bigger and bigger and more supported even down the road at their place. I mean, they get enormous crowds now, and they're getting bigger and bigger, lionesses, etc. It can only be a good thing for the women's game, but let's hope that Tottenham can win. It's only Manchester United, isn't it, that we're playing? Only Man U.
Only then. It
Are they
don't matter
good?
too much.
Probably not.
No,
So good
they've
luck
got
to them.
their ups.
Absolutely brilliant. Feel good factor, Hollie. That's what we need. And that's what we need for the end of the men's season as well.
And I think that's the thing, like you kind of alluded to, the fact that obviously for the women's game, it has come a very long way. I mean, I pinch myself still thinking that when I was younger, I never had any of this. And to now think that they are going to a final. So it does really allude that what the club as a whole are managing to do, but what women's football is doing for the country as well. For you, Sonny.
Oh, sorry, was that to me? Sorry, I'm really going back to Russ. Yeah, I just think, you look at this, the team for Tottenham as well, and the way that they've grown, like they've gone from like the lower leagues all the way up, and it's just good. And I forget the name of the Tottenham women's manager, but he came in around the same time as Ange, and it was this whole new it was sort of they came in together to try and improve the morale of the team, and and they both seem to have done it in their own ways. A lot of people, there's still, and it should be more even, there's still more focus on the men's side than there is the women's. But, like the sport in general, the gap is closing. It is getting there. But yeah, an FA Cup final, I mean, that's the thing. It's like, as you said, with the Lionesses went to Wembley and did it. Can Spurs women go and do what the men seem to not be able to do and put show them up a little bit, because it's going to be a big day. I mean, same with Manchester United. Even though it's Manchester United, their women's team is still quite young in terms of modern football and stuff like that. So it's going to be, and they've been under pressure at stages this season. Skinner's been under a lot of pressure. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. But you just hope like a little bit of silverware just to keep Daniel Levy happy as well, hopefully.
And I think that's the thing, because obviously, as we all know, we're not getting too political, but you see things on Twitter and you think to yourself, I really don't care. It's Tottenham, regardless if that's under 21s, regardless if that's the women's, even regardless if it's like something ridiculous like the under 9s, Bob. It's it's Spurs at the end of the day, and I think it's just such a great occasion to be going to Wembley.
Yeah, firstly though, and I will jump back to that, Hollie, Russ bringing up Scalacci to an Irishman when he scored the goal and was Hattie 90 to knock us out in the quarter-final. That's
Sorry, mate.
Appreciated.
Sorry, Bob.
Making my weekend worse.
It was a slip of the brain, mate.
Anyway, but yeah, no, look, it's obviously fantastic to see the women in the final of the FA Cup. Plenty of young girls out there have heroes they can look up to, and when they're participating in it, there were so many years they didn't have those women to look up to. So it's fantastic from that side. And yeah, look, we're one club, aren't we? I found myself, even, and hands up, I would never have really kept an eye out for the women's team results. I'll be honest. And over the last kind of 2 years, I'll always have a little scroll down my live score when I know they're playing, or I didn't watch the game yesterday, but I was on Twitter refreshing the women's page and genuinely getting a bit of a kick out. I was, geez, go on, the girl. I was like, really up for it. Like, so look, it's fantastic to see. And I think, as I said, the bigger picture is the even better thing to see. And as I said, that's kind of it having a place now, and women's sport taking off. And I said, a lot of young girls having players to look up to, and that they can dream of being one day. So it's fantastic.
And that's the thing, it's a Spurs trophy at the end of the day, so fingers crossed that they do manage to go and do it, which I think is the day after we play Burnley at home. So hopefully I can manage to get tickets to the women's games. I can watch the men on the Saturday and the women's game on the Sunday, because that would be cracking. But you know what, it's been amazing. Obviously not so much amazing to dissect that loss, but it's been good to talk it through. So we'll go around the table and say our goodbyes. So thank you again, Russ, for joining us tonight. Where
absolute
can
pleasure.
Find you?
Thanks for having me on. Keep up the great work, by the way. Nation Radio in the morning, across the whole of the UK from 11, DAB, online, Nation Player app. Great music, bit of chat. I'll get you through the day. There you go. But thanks for having me on, Hollie. Great to be on with Sonny and Bob as well. Brilliant.
Amazing stuff. No, thank you again, Russ. Really appreciate it. And Sonny as well, thank you again for this evening. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, we've had this one penciled in for a while, but next time after a win, hopefully. But yeah, Sonny Talk Spurs on YouTube, growing quite nicely over there, but always wanting to welcome new fans who want a different perspective on Tottenham, different sort of videos to what you can get out on YouTube, and then Sonny Snelling on all my socials. I don't tweet too much, usually just promoting my videos, but yeah, follow all them.
Lovely stuff. And I must say, Sonny's videos are cracking, man. I do like going to watch them. So thank you for that, Sonny. And also, Bob, it's been amazing to have you on this evening. Where can everybody find you as well?
Yeah, so just really on Twitter, which is Bobby Dwyer 1989. Yeah, great to be on. I try to think I'm reasonable and logical enough on Twitter when I'm dissecting things and not be too fiery. I went through phases of being fiery, and I decided this year I tried to relax a bit. So it's going so far so good. But no, it's been great to be on. And yeah, Russ, I just need to compliment that voice. It's audible chocolate from Russ, top notch.
It's earned me a few euros over the years, Bob.
Good stuff.
And hopefully a few more in the future to buy you two a beer if I see you in the pub. So
you'll see me over there non-stop. Yeah, that's the dangerous part of my days. And we just shout out, we need to get Benjamin Nibb back on Twitter. If anyone else has noticed, he's disappeared, so we need to get him back on. So
all right.
Yeah. So I'm just more getting the campaign going. But no, look, it's been great to be on. Really, really enjoyed it.
No, thank you. And I just want to say a big thank you as well to Ian, that tonight came a member of the channel. So thank you very much, Ian. I think that's the first one. So cheers, my friend. And obviously as well in the chat, I brought it up earlier, Kyle, again, I mean, the man's a myth and a legend on the channel. He's become a member again for another month. So thank you so much. But like I say, thank you to everybody that's joined tonight. Cheers for watching. Hollie Spurs Live won't be back, obviously, Monday. We're going to take a bit of a break because obviously we don't have a game. But we will be back this Wednesday for Wes and Nelson to get the tactics board out to dissect those zonal markings again. So until next time, like we always say, come on you Spurs.